To viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Our top stories. North Koreans want to make Trump tells his supporters it's time to talk. Moves to ban rapid-fire bump stocks. The Trump administration makes a first attempt at gun control. President Trump has been back on the campaign trail, telling crowds at an election rally in Pennsylvania in the last hour that steel mills are reopening or expanding because he's imposing tariffs on imports. The rally was held in support of a Republican candidate in a threatened congressional seat. He also defended his plan to hold talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, saying he thought Pyongyang wanted to make peace.
We've been very strong and very vigilant, and now lots of good things I think are going to happen, but we'll see. But the funny thing, so they announced that he's not going to anymore until through the meetings. Well, think of that. You know, we were getting a lot of missiles sent. I wouldn't say Japan was thrilled, missiles flying over Japan. They're very happy with what I'm doing. And who else could do it? I mean, honestly, when you think. They're not going to send missiles up. Think of it. They're not sending missiles up. And I believe that. I believe that. I really do. I think they want to do something. I think they want to make peace. I think it's time. And I think we've shown great strength. I think that's also important. Right?
President Trump also defended his decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium.
I took a lot of heat over that. But let me tell you, all these countries now are calling up. We don't want the tariffs. What do we have to do? European Union, they kill us. Sounds good. A lot of us came from the European Union, different countries, right? Sounds nice. They kill us on trade. So we put on tariffs, and the European Union's out there. Well, we're going to put on. I said, you can't go any higher than you are anyway. And they have trade barriers. We can't even sell our farming goods in there. They totally restrict us. So then they say, we want those tariffs taken off. I said, good. Open up the barriers and get rid of your tariffs. If you don't do that, we're going to tax Mercedes-Benz. We're going to tax BMW. You want to have money? You want to have money come into our country?
And Mr. Trump made those remarks after trade talks in Brussels between the EU, Japan and the US, which ended without any agreement to exclude them from President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminium. Our business correspondent Joe Lynham has the background to the international effort to avoid a trade war.
The meeting between the US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and his EU and Japanese counterparts, Cecilia Malmström and Hiroshige Seiko respectively, had long been in the diary. But following the formal imposition of tariffs on steel and aluminium by the US this week, the meeting took on some urgency. Neither the EU nor the Japanese are the biggest steel exporters to America, but they don't want their producers to pay a 25% tariff either. But its International Trade Minister Liam Fox travels to Washington next week to seek exactly that.
We'll be, of course, looking to see how we can maximise the UK's for exemption, particular circumstances, but we'll want over the next few days to look at them in great detail.
If Europe gets a carve-out from the American tariffs, they will join an ever-growing list of nations who won't be paying. The Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull met Donald Trump and removed his country from the list. Canada and Mexico have already been exempted.
I was very pleased the President was able to confirm that he would not have to impose tariffs on Australian steel and aluminium, and of course now the legal paperwork process under the executive order will take its course to put that direction into effect. So that was a very good and productive discussion with the President.
America's other key allies, including Japan and South Korea, will also want to be spared. In the end, it might only be Russia and China paying the US tariffs. That, though, might be enough to start a trade war between two of the world's biggest exporters. Joe Lynham, BBC News.
Well, sticking with the United States, there's been some move towards gun control, with the Department of Justice taking the first step towards banning bump stocks, which allow rifles to fire with the speed of machine guns. Bump stocks were used last year by a gunman in Las Vegas to kill 58 people. The definition of machine guns, which are banned, will be changed to include bump stocks. Our Washington correspondent Chris Buckler has more.
Well, I think it's one step towards trying to improve gun safety. It's certainly new restrictions that a lot of campaigners have been asking for, and indeed which President Trump himself has talked about. As you mentioned, these are devices which essentially modify semi-automatic weapons and turn them into automatic machine guns in effect. Basically, they increase the speed at which bullets can be fired. And it was that attack in Las Vegas in October in which 58 people were killed and hundreds were injured that really brought it to the fore, because these devices were used on semi-automatic rifles then to use them effectively as machine guns. Now, it's important to say that this is just the first step in a lengthy process. President Trump has been talking about this, and it's now clear the Department of Justice want to do it. But the proposal has to jump through a number of hoops before it's finally made law. And there is the chance that there will also be legal challenge. But it is a sense that campaigners are being heard, at least with their message, that gun restrictions, that new laws to try to tighten legislation is something they want. What is interesting, though, is that this is not in itself new legislation. As you mentioned, this is really about redefining existing legislation and making bump stocks one of the things that is defined as a machine gun, and that's how it will be tightened. But effectively, it makes them illegal for sale.
Chris Buckler in Washington. Next. Monitoring groups in Syria say more than 1,000 people have been killed since government forces stepped up their bombardment of eastern Ghouta 3 weeks ago. Soldiers loyal to President Assad are reported to have made significant advances and are believed to have cut off the biggest town in the area, Douma, and isolated another. Martin Patience reports.
This is where the UN calls hell on earth. Today, an injured man is scrambled to safety. But warplanes are overhead. There's no escape. The Syrian army has now reportedly surrounded the main town of Douma. Syrian jets are pounding the besieged enclave. There are rebel fighters, some extremist, but hundreds of thousands of civilians are trapped inside. The United Nations calls these airstrikes collective punishment. Syria and its backer Russia are not listening. The Syrian army is advancing. Eastern Ghouta is the last major opposition stronghold close to the capital. This commander seems confident of victory. The terrorists, as he calls them, are on the run. But civilians are caught. They have nowhere to run. An aid convoy reached them, delivering food supplies. But international organisations say it's nowhere near enough. The battle for Eastern Ghouta appears to be entering the final stage. But the end could be bloodier than what's come before. Martin Patience, BBC News, Lebanon.
Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news now. Polls have opened in a controversial by-election in Hong Kong that's being held after 6 pro-democracy lawmakers were disqualified from its legislative council. The election is expected to be bitterly fought, with the pro-democracy camp desperate to regain its crucial 1/3 veto bloc in the legislature. 4 of the 6 vacant seats are being contested. President Trump's former chief strategist Steve Bannon has told a conference of far-right National Front Party in France that it is part of a global anti-establishment movement that will win many victories. In a wide-ranging speech, Mr. Bannon took aim at banks, what he called the globalized elite, and the mainstream media. He also spoke of a growing wave of populism across Europe. This is BBC News. Still to come, the Education Secretary pledges to do away with pointless tasks for teachers to encourage more to stay in the profession. Police have identified more than 200 witnesses and are examining around 240 pieces of evidence in the investigation into the attempted murder of a former Russian spy and his daughter. Sergei and Yulia Skripal are still in hospital in a critical condition. The BBC understands that traces of the nerve agent used in the attack have been found in the pizzeria where they were eating last Sunday afternoon. Our Home Affairs correspondent Dominic Casciani has the latest.
Is this the key location in the hunt for whoever attacked Sergei and Yulia Skripal? Tonight the BBC has learned a trace of the nerve agent has been found in the pizzeria where they ate last Sunday. The localised trace was found during a continuing examination of the scene. There's no suggestion anyone else who was there last Sunday is in danger. It's a crucial piece of evidence in an evolving and huge operation. This was the scene at Salisbury's ambulance station as chemical warfare specialists arrived earlier today. A vehicle designed to save lives, posing a grave risk to the public. Detectives calling on the help of the military to make it safe. This is the second major military operation in Salisbury in the last 24 hours. Last night we saw them take away a police car from the hospital. Today they're taking away ambulances which were potentially contaminated last Sunday. Everyone in this city is watching and waiting to see when this emergency will end, and the nation is watching and waiting to find out who's behind this crime. Ministers are being briefed on the unfolding investigation. Today, the second meeting in a week of the government's emergency committee, COBRA.
This investigation is focused on making sure that we keep people safe as a priority. That's what the COBRA meeting was about. And also making sure that we collect all the evidence. So when it comes to attribution, we will be absolutely clear where it should lead.
The main cemetery is one of 5 sites under investigation. It's been closed to the public as officers examine the graves of Mr. Skripal's wife and son. Today there was no change in his condition or that of his daughter. Still critical, still in intensive care. Wiltshire Police released a statement on behalf of the third victim of the nerve agent, Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey. He said he and his family are hugely grateful for all the messages of support. He doesn't consider himself a hero. He was merely doing a job he loves. Salisbury too is a proud city and trying to get on with life. Shoppers out in the market and officials drawing up a plan to help businesses affected by the police operation. But with more barriers going up tonight at the park bench where the emergency began, it may be weeks yet before it's all over. Dominic Casciani, BBC News in Salisbury.
The Education Secretary says he wants to resolve a recruitment crisis in England's schools by cutting the workload of teachers. Damien Hines told a conference of head teachers that the government would strip away pointless tasks so their staff can focus on what actually matters. Here's Elaine Dunkley.
This is Passmore's Academy in Essex, and like so many schools, it's struggling to recruit teachers. It's had to use innovative ways to attract staff.
We even offer housing. That's one of our school houses over there, so you can come and live cheaply at Passmore's while you pay off your student loan.
The difficulty in recruiting means many classrooms around the country now rely on agency supply teachers to cover permanent vacancies.
Government keeps missing targets about recruitment into the profession. We've got sort of 4,000 less teachers than we need, and especially in the shortage subjects, you know, key subjects in the curriculum, English, maths, science, all those sorts of things.
The issue isn't just about recruiting new staff, but stopping existing teachers from leaving the profession. Over the next 5 years in England, the pupil numbers are expected to increase, along with pressures and demands on teachers. Jake Rusby left the profession after 3 years.
I would work 65, 70-hour weeks with planning, marking, the assessments you're doing. The actual teaching part of it probably took up the least time of everything. So that was one major factor. But for me, I got out of the education system thinking and feeling that the whole thing needed to be turned on its head for me.
Today at a conference for head teachers, the government promised to address these issues, but there was little talk of extra funding.
For the rest of this Parliament, there will be no new additional statutory tests or assessments for primary schools, no further changes to the national curriculum, and no more reform of GCSEs and A-levels.
Stability in schools was the message, the government accepting it needs to work harder to reduce pressure in the classrooms.
Got 3x, is it plus or minus 21?
But head teachers say extra funding is the missing part of the formula. Elaine Dunkley, BBC News.
The nephew of the actress Liz Hurley has been stabbed repeatedly in a street in South London by Miles Hurley, who's a 21-year-old model, was one of 2 men injured in the knife attack on Thursday. He remains in hospital. Police say his condition isn't life-threatening. This is BBC News, the headlines. At an election rally, President Donald Trump has defended his plan to talk directly with Kim Jong-un, saying he believes it's time and North Koreans want to make peace. The United States federal government has taken the first step towards banning bump accessories, allowing semi-automatic rifles to fire continuously. Well, let's get more on our top story. The speech Donald Trump made at a rally in Pennsylvania in support of Republican candidate Rick Saccone. One of the subjects he talked about was drugs, and the president wants to see a policy of zero tolerance for dealers.
A drug dealer will kill 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people during the course of his or her life. Thousands of people are killed, or their lives are destroyed, their families are destroyed. So you can kill thousands of people and go to jail for 30 days. They catch a drug dealer, they don't even put him in jail. Think of it. You kill one person, you get the death penalty in many states. Life imprisonment. You think of it. You kill 5,000 people with drugs because you're smuggling them in and you're making a lot of money and people are dying and they don't even put you in jail. They don't do anything. I think it's a discussion we have to start thinking about. Don't you agree? I don't know if you're ready. I don't know if this country's ready for it. But I think, Rick, I think it's a discussion that we have to start thinking about.
The Sri Lankan government says it will pay for all the damage caused by days of violent anti-Muslim protests in the city of Kandy. That includes buildings gutted by fire and businesses that were ransacked in 4 days of riots. Several people were also killed in a wave of attacks on Muslims by Buddhist hardliners. Jill McGivering has the latest.
This was the moment the Prime Minister saw the devastation for himself. Burnt-out shops, smashed windows and badly damaged mosques. The violence here is a reminder that tensions between Buddhist and Muslim communities run deep. Many businesses are still closed, and with mosques damaged, Friday prayers were held in the open air under army protection. The military are out in force now. On the surface, all is calm. But many Muslims say they still feel unsafe and flee to the jungle to hide at night. The government now promises to pay for the damage. Local officials have been told to start the clean-up at once. And in another sign of life starting to return to normal, the curfew was lifted on Saturday. But a social media ban is still in place. At the height of the violence, a state of emergency was declared and thousands of troops sent onto the streets. Buddhist mobs, mostly from the Sinhala community, attacked Muslim-owned properties, reacting to reports that a Buddhist man had been killed by a group of Muslims. This monk risked his life to protect mosques in his area from attack.
There were 4 attempted attacks. We were able to successfully stop them. In one instance, we quickly got the police to come. In another, we ran towards the attackers and sent them away. There are 14 mosques in this area, and we didn't allow anything to happen to them. We found several petrol bombs. There were 2 failed attacks with these petrol bombs.
Mohammed Faisal's home was ransacked.
They've looted our house. My sister only got married recently. They have taken all her jewellery. My small brother collected money in a till to buy a watch, and they have even taken that. See how they have torn our 2-month-old child's toy? I think more than racism, their intention was to loot.
Police say that nearly 150 people. Sri Lanka's president has launched an independent investigation into what happened, a signal from the government that it will restore justice here. Jill McGivering, BBC News.
In 1997, the world's most famous woman, Diana, Princess of Wales, called for an international ban on landmines. She was visiting Angola, where she caught global attention by walking through a live minefield. Paul Heslop from the British demining organisation the Halo Trust was with Diana during her iconic walk. He's been telling Witness about the impact of Princess Diana's campaign, which took place just 6 months before she died.
Good morning, ma'am.
When she arrived, she was very nervous. She'd landed in one of the most shot-up parts of the world. It was dangerous, and there's this fat Yorkshireman basically saying, "You need to listen to me, I'm going to give you a safety briefing."
These are the things that have been killing a lot of the children.
And if you don't listen to what I say, you could get killed or seriously injured. Which is probably not the best opening line to a princess.
The princess got straight down to business, publicly endorsing the Red Cross campaign for a worldwide ban on landmines.
It is my sincere hope that by working together in the next few days, we shall focus world attention on this vital, but until now largely neglected, issue.
My job was to be the programme manager for a British charity that specialised in clearing landmines and the other detritus of war. This was, probably the most famous woman in the world. So for me, it was going to be an opportunity to highlight and show off the amazing work we did. I had absolutely no idea what was coming in terms of the amount of media that came off planes. I was expecting a few journalists. I think there was something like 90 following around.
She threaded her way along a safe corridor cleared by British demining teams in the former rebel stronghold of Huambo.
As you can see, they've been working away here and they've excavated out and they've uncovered a mine.
The actual 5-10 minutes we were in the minefield, my mind was just in an overdrive, trying to make sure that I wasn't going to be the most famous person in the world the next blowing up the Princess of Wales.
Firing.
The princess says the row over her support for the Red Cross campaign to ban anti-personnel mines is a distraction that wasn't needed.
Ma'am, a government minister at home has said you're a loose cannon by supporting this campaign. Do you have any reaction to that?
I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
She was caught out quite badly by that question. She was very upset, and I think she was caught off guard by how political it became. My impression was she was genuinely there because she was wanting to make a difference and use her celebrity to highlight a problem.
The Red Cross is working here to help the casualties still claimed each day by the estimated 15 million unexploded landmines that litter the country.
Princess Diana really did engage, and you could see from her facial expressions and some of the questions that she was very moved by what she was seeing. She was very engaged on the issue.
Within the treatment, do you cope with the psychological side of it as well?
She was a mother, and when she saw children who had been blown to pieces and were missing limbs,
Every 6 months,
it moved her, and you could see it moved her. I think that Diana's involved in the support of the Ottawa Treaty banning landmines led to a huge increase in public awareness of the problem of mines. And then ultimately, 6 months later, we made it very hard for the British government and a number of other governments not to ratify the treaty. You say a picture paints 1,000 words. For her to be wearing the body armour and walking through the minefield, that image has been an iconic image of the 20th century.
Memories of the work of Princess Diana there from our witness team. Now, people living near a volcano in Japan have been warned to wear hard hats as its eruptions get more violent. Mount Shinmaodake is ejecting rocks and smoke several kilometres into the air. It's the volcano's 4th eruption this century. Andrew Plant reports.
Nighttime in southwestern Japan. High above these houses, the red glow of one of the country's most active volcanoes. This is Mount Shinmaodake, awake again after 7 years. In 2011, locals were evacuated. It's now being watched very closely. Smoke is rising more than 3,000 metres into the air. High winds blowing ash across the towns nearby. These school children now wearing protective hard hats, with authorities warning of the risk of flying rocks up to 4 kilometres around the volcano. Deep in the south of Japan, it's part of a long volcanic range in a country with more than 100 active volcanoes. In 1967, it was made famous on the big screen in the James Bond film You Only Live Twice as the location of the secret rock, the mysterious villains of the Spectre organisation. The volcano has been spitting smoke and lava since the beginning of March, and with ground tremors and more than 10 eruptions every day, experts are watching to see just how violent this volcano will become. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
And of course, we'll be monitoring that volcano for you here on BBC News. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter at @LVaughanJones. For now, though, the weather with Stav Danaeus.
Well, despite the rain, what most